Live from the hippest spot online, you've arrived at the Pop Culture Juke Joint, the only weekly podcast you'll need for intelligent showbiz chats. Located just up the street from the Peach Pit and down that dark, damp alley behind Fonzie's Garage, you'll find former newsman and current hard-boiled crime writer Anthony Venutolo, chatting with guests about everything from old-school classics to new-school staples. So head up to the bar, grab a drink, and settle in here at the Pop Culture Juke Joint. Now, your host, Anthony Venutolo.
Welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint, where each week we take one deep dive into a particular topic of pop culture, be it movies, TV, books, music, media, you name it. This week, co-host Jack Lugo and I discuss the Amazon series The Last Tycoon. It's an adaptation of F. Scott Fitzgerald's final unfinished novel set in 1930s Hollywood. It's a great era because it was darkened by the Depression and the growing influence of Hitler and the rise of unions. This lush and grand series was written and directed by Billy Ray, and it centers on Monroe Starr, played by Matt Bomer. Starr is a handsome and talented studio executive whose career is undoubtedly on the rise. Now, as he struggles to gain a foothold in the industry, to bringing his film visions to life, he has to navigate a power struggle with Pat Brady, played by Kelsey Grammer. Brady is the owner of Brady American Pictures and the movie studio in which the series is set. Now, Jack and I are a little aggravated because the series was canceled by Amazon. He and I discussed this with series creator Billy Ray, and he talked to us for about a half hour, and we kind of got down to the bottom of why Amazon canceled it. But you know what? Fret not. There is life left, possibly, for this series. And Billy Ray explains. So sit back, relax, grab that drink, enter the juke joint. I'm going to tell you why I was really, really aggravated the other day, and I can say with the utmost honesty that I think you ruined my day.
Tell me, because I think I know what it is, but tell me.
Yeah, well, I was at work, and I think you either DM'd me or shared something on my Facebook wall that said Amazon canceled The Last Tycoon.
Yeah, I came across it, and it actually happened over a weekend. I came across it on the Monday because I was busy the weekend, didn't see it. And then I came across this news, and I couldn't believe it because the show had just, Amazon had just premiered it, I think, at the end of July, the very last week of July, I think. And then it had all of August, and then like the very beginning of September, they canceled it. They only gave it, I think, 6 weeks. So that's very, I was disappointed and a little bit pissed off, and I think you were too.
Lunacy. It's complete lunacy. And for people who don't know, The Last Tycoon is based on the last and unfinished novel of F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yes.
And it takes us into the glamorous world of old Hollywood, and it centers on a young studio head of production whiz named Monroe Starr. Okay, and he's played by Matt Bomer, perhaps maybe the most handsome man on the planet.
Yeah, not only is he handsome, but Matt Bomer is just a great actor in this series. I mean, every scene that he's in, even though Kelsey Grammer's in and great cast overall, but every scene Matt Bomer's in, you're totally fixed on him.
But this guy's so handsome. Don Draper is going, that guy's handsome. So you know where I'm headed. So, yeah. But if you like period dramas that are lush and grand and filled with intrigue and romance and backstabs, and this is your show. It takes place in 1936 in Hollywood, and it takes place at the fictitious Brady American Pictures. The show also stars our old friend from Cheers,
Kelsey Grammer.
Wonderful Kelsey Grammer. I'm going to say understated here. I mean, he's not brash or loud. It's a really interesting performance by Kelsey Grammer, right?
Yeah, he's a great dramatic actor too. I mean, obviously, we know him from Cheers and Frasier, and obviously as Sideshow Bob. But he's
the Boss. Didn't he play?
Boss, yes.
On Stars, and I think he won an Emmy or Golden Globe for that.
Yeah, he did.
So it kind of threw a kink into my day when I found that out, because really enjoyed watching the show every week. And I do say every week because I would watch it maybe, on the weekends, on a Saturday or Sunday, and kind of enjoy it and savor it, not like blast through it the way I blasted through Glow. So I don't know what to do. So I reached out to Billy Ray, the director and producer and creator of The Last Tycoon, and we're going to get him on the phone.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
All right, so we're going to work that out, and we'll see what he has to say about this, because you know what? We're angry. We want to get down to the bottom of it. Right, Jack?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Hang tight. Okay, we are on with Billy Ray, director, producer, and an Oscar-nominated screenwriter. Now, you've certainly seen a lot of his stuff before as the writer of State of Play, Hunger Games, and Captain Phillips. Most recently, though, he's the creator and executive producer of Amazon's The Last Tycoon, which Jack and I absolutely loved. And it's based on the unfinished and last novel of F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it kind of delves into the glamorous world of old Hollywood. I want to get right into the Amazon news from the other day, because you know what? As soon as Jack saw that, he sent it to me. And when I tell you I was so angry at that news, that they canceled The Last Tycoon. It's a big mistake, we think. And we were hoping that, Amazon Studios or whoever was really behind it could have stuck with it at least a couple of seasons to allow it to find its audience. I mean, what can you say about what's going on there? What happened?
Well, first of all, they may yet. I'm still in conversations with them, asking them to reconsider. Mm-hmm. And although I don't love our chances, we're far from dead. There's also one other network at this moment that we're talking to. I anticipate there may be a few more people who value the show, and I think we're going to have a shot at those other venues too. So I believe very strongly that this story will continue. I believe this is going to sound so artsy-fartsy, so please forgive me, but I believe this is my destiny. I believe this is the story I was born to tell. And I believe that everything else I've done in my entire career was just to prepare me to tell this story. Every high, every low, every bump, every bruise was there to prepare me. So I guess my long-winded answer to your question is, when I first got that news, I wasn't angry or sad. I was just sort of mystified, because I believe so strongly that this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 4 or 5 years. I felt like there had just been sort of a hiccup in the timeline or something, and we have to get it back on track.
Sure. I mean, I was just telling Jack that literally it was a month ago. I had the TV Guide in my hand with Kelsey Grammer and Matt Bomer on the cover. Like they were going all in on this. So like Jack and I found this really, really odd.
I was very surprised. Yeah, I mean, I'm very disappointed to find out the news, but I'm glad to hear that there's still a chance that Amazon might renew.
I'm insisting on it. Look, there are lots of metrics that Amazon uses to determine the success of a show, and none of them I'm privy to. But the one that they talk about the most has to do with what's called a completion rate, which is how quickly do people complete the entire season once they start it. the reason why I think that metric is not particularly reflective in our case is we didn't create a binge show. We created a show in which each episode is kind of like a meal. And when you're done with a meal, which has been dense and complicated, you want a little time before your next meal. So this is just anecdotal, but people keep coming up to me and saying, my wife and I love your show. We watch it on Sunday nights. Think, okay, that's a couple that's going to take 9 weeks to complete season 1. Amazon canceled us after 6, citing the low completion rate. And I kept saying to them, there are people out there that love the show that have not yet completed it. Now, maybe that just sounds like a guy trying to defend his show, but I do believe that's actually much more reflective of how the audience responded to this show. And the other thing, just so you know, that I said to Amazon, because I was literally confused about it, was why is it better for someone in our audience to come to the Amazon site once and stay for 9 hours than it is for them to come to the Amazon site 9 times?
Right.
And no one at Amazon could answer that question for me. You know, there's a half-hour show they make over there called Catastrophe, which I love. Absolutely.
Great show.
But you can consume a season of Catastrophe in less than 3 hours.
Exactly.
We were asking 9.
Sure.
And our material was, as I said, pretty dense. Yeah. So I don't think you can use the same metric to apply to all different kinds of shows.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, you want to. I didn't binge your show. I mean, like I maybe watched like 2 episodes back to back, but yeah, you definitely need like a break to kind of like have the episode like, you know, like you want to live in that world for a little bit and kind of consume what happened in that particular episode before you move on.
Well, exactly. And I was savoring it. I mean, that was kind of like my weekend show. So, you know, on my Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon show, when everyone was out of the house, I maybe would put on, you know, 1, maybe 2 if I got an extra time, but it was my weekend thing and I wanted to savor it. You know, I don't want to blast through the show and I want to enjoy it on my time, maybe once a week, like you said. So
I very much appreciate that. You know, I had a feature career and continue to have a feature career that I was pretty happy with, that I was completely willing to put on ice to tell this story because I love it so much and because to be honest with you, it's the most fun I ever had. But when I think about the TV shows that showed me how great TV could be, Sopranos, Mad Men, The Wire, Downton, Breaking Bad, I mean, that's just 5 off the top of my head, but they're sort of my fabled 5. I didn't binge any of them.
No.
I watched them all once a week, and that felt like the right amount of time in between episodes. I loved looking forward to it. I loved sort of the appointment television nature of it. If that's the goal that we were shooting for, I feel good that we got there. And I'm not saying we're as good as those 5 shows. I'm just saying the audience that did respond really did like to savor the show. And again, I hate to be quoting our own good stats, but if you go to the Amazon site and look at our customer reviews, they're phenomenal. Right. And they're, you know, over 89% 4 and 5-star reviews. So I feel like we did our job. But I do feel the target was moved on us a little bit. And that's what I'm trying to impress upon Amazon now.
Well, and to your point, I think just in my own Facebook feed, I'm starting to see mentions of the show now, you know, right. which kind of proves your point, where people are watching it. They're maybe even finishing it now, and now they're telling their friends about it, you know, some odd weeks later. So I think you're onto something there.
Well, we also we were the beneficiaries of a truly strange piece of research which tracked how affluent the audience of a show is.
Interesting.
What they do is they measure how many of the homes that are watching a given show have a household income of $100,000 or more. And what they found is that the percentage of our audience that is in that strata is 69%, which is the 5th highest number in all of television.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a pretty impressive number.
I'll tell you the 4 shows that are higher. The highest is Homeland. 74% of its audience is $100,000 households.
Wow.
Or
okay.
Billions is second.
That would make sense.
Veep is third, and Silicon Valley is fourth.
All right.
And we're fifth. So again, the case I was making to Amazon was that audience is not watching TV in August. They're traveling. They're out.
Right.
And, to release our show, which by any metric is not a summer show, to release our show on July 28th and expect it to play in August, I do believe was sort of setting us up to fail.
Yeah. I never even thought about it like that, but yeah, you make a great point. But now you have a petition. I understand there's a petition. Did you start it, or what's going on with that? So
no. We have some very dedicated and loyal fans. They're called the Tycooners, and I love them all and feel a great debt to them all. And I don't know who started the petition, but someone started a Save the Last Tycoon petition. They started it on Twitter, and I guess it has migrated now to Facebook. And obviously, the more signatures we get on that, the better I can make my case when I go back into Amazon.
So where can they find this petition online?
I think if you just type in hashtag Save the Last
Tycoon. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I found it. And I did sign the.
Thank you.
Okay. And you know
By
what?
the way,
A period drama like this, there's a real value to it. So I really hope that this show finds a home for season 2.
I've never been in a position like this before in my career. When you make a movie, good, bad, or indifferent, it's over. You've done this complete piece of work, and the audience will either respond to it or they won't. And, the happy examples of Captain Phillips or The Hunger Games, they do. And to a smaller degree on Shattered Glass or Breach, they did. And those were really rewarding, very, very gratifying responses. But either way, the movie's behind you by the time the public weighs in. A TV series, which I've never done before, is a very different experience because the day you wrap season 1 of a series, everybody in the cast and crew is hugging each other and congratulating each other and saying, I'll see you after the hiatus. And they expect to be back on that set in 5 months or 6 months. They are all, particularly on a show like ours, which we all felt was coming out well, they're all planning 4 years down the road of being a family.
Sure.
And to have that interrupted has required me to now go to the public and say, please help me. I've never had to do that before in my career. I feel very much like I'm sort of hat in hand, and it's not a comfortable feeling, but my love of the show is so total that I'm completely willing to humiliate myself in any way possible. And if somebody said, put on this chicken costume and walk down the freeway, you'll get a season 2, I would do it.
Well, here's hoping we can probably help out a little bit with that.
So what is it about the setting of the Hollywood in 1930s that drew you to the material and made this project become a passion for you?
Well, first of all, it's Fitzgerald, and you don't get opportunities to work on Fitzgerald very often, and it's also unfinished. So we weren't going to get. I didn't think we were going to get the kind of critical backlash that you get when you try to make a finished piece of work like Gatsby, where the critics just sort of come out and they crush you. Beyond that, I found as I was reading the book that the Hollywood of 1936 was exactly like the Hollywood of today. The conversations are exactly the same. I've been in those conversations for all of my career. And it's odd, but I kept thinking as I was reading the book, I kept thinking about MASH, both the series and the movie. And I was thinking about how MASH, by setting itself in Korea during the Vietnam War, was able to be one of the most powerful anti-Vietnam War vehicles ever without saying the word Vietnam. It was just this great allegory about the senselessness of this war. And I thought that Tycoon could be the same thing, that we could comment on the Hollywood of 2017 by telling the story of Hollywood in 1936. And we would be able to shine a light on things that you would sound preachy if you focused on in a contemporary fashion. Then on top of it, you've got the glamour and the beauty and the castability of it. And you've also got this unique period, 1936, if you go back and look at American history, and you made a list of the most turbulent years in American history, certainly 1861, the beginning of the Civil War, certainly 1968, when the country almost came apart. But I've put 1936 right there in that top three in terms of what was happening both nationally and internationally. Pretty fascinating time to set a story.
Watching like the pilot, I was surprised at how how much of the collaboration that your show obviously touches on goes into, how much of that was real. And I did my own little bit of research, and I was kind of shocked at how pervasive it was.
Oh, it was completely true, and all of it taken from a brilliant book called The Collaborators. Written by Ben Irwan. I don't want to get that name wrong, but I think that's right. Ben Irwan. Great.
Yeah, I believe that is the book, yeah.
But interestingly, although less pernicious, I've been in that conversation in Hollywood. It's just now about China. I was writing a movie for a major studio, and they said to me, okay, great, really happy with the script. This bad guy can't be from China. And I said, why? And they said, it's just too big a market. So can you make him Russian? I guess they don't give a shit if they annoy the Russians.
Wow.
But it's the exact same conversation. It's the exact same dynamic. It's just not about Nazi Germany.
It's funny. Jack and I were talking about that literally about an hour ago, talking about the parallels between, like Germany and possibly now China. And we were kind of wondering and even debating a little whether that was the case. But I'm really glad you brought that up. That's great.
Look, here's the thing about Hollywood. Having spent all of my adult life working in it, which is not a small amount of time, I'm sorry to report. There is a power dynamic that's in place because films are the most expensive art form in the history of man. And to make a movie now requires, $40 million if you're making a mid-range movie, $150 million if you're making a big CGI movie. Then to open that movie, to market it, is going to require another $50 to $60 million. So that's $200 million. And let's say you want to tell a story. If you don't have $200 million, you have to go to someone who does. And that's usually the studio. The second you do that and you take their money, your story becomes their product and therefore becomes their property. And that changes the dynamic of how that story gets told because they have this gigantic financial stake in the public acceptance of that piece of material. And it stops at that point being art and it starts being commerce. And that power dynamic has been in place since the beginning of movies. That dynamic between writer, director, actor, producer, and the money has never changed. The conversations are the same today as they were in 1936. It's a world I happen to know very, very well and felt like our telling that 1936 story would shine a light on what the world looks like today.
Wow. Yeah, that's an excellent point.
It also, by the way, I'm sorry to keep going, but it also, the 1930s is a particularly interesting time to take a look at what films were about, because the 1930s, for the first time ever, is the period in which the American dream is getting packaged and sold as a commodity through media. The American dream had always existed, through the mass immigration of the 1840s and the 1880s, and even in the very early 1900s, people were coming here for the American dream. But the 1930s is the first time that we ever showed everybody what it looked like and put it on film and blew it out to the rest of the world. And that definition that Hollywood created is still the definition that most people see today when they think about America and they think about the American dream. It's that movie made America that we created in the 1930s. So the idea of telling the story of people who were actually manufacturing those images was totally irresistible to us.
Can you take us inside the writer's room of The Last Tycoon? Because you were talking about the era and packaging the dream. And,
Sure.
I would imagine, Jack and I talked about this all the time when Boardwalk Empire was on, because I used to cover that and I used to do extensive recaps, and Jack was like the first one in the forum every morning. And when I was talking about the writer's room at Boardwalk Empire, must have been this, libraries of almanacs or magazines and newspapers and scandal sheets from the era. I mean, is that what your writer's room kind of looked like to kind of get inside the head of people in 1936?
Well, it's actually a bunch of people with laptops who could look up everything.
Right.
Yeah, we were hugely benefited by having a brilliant author named A. Scott Berg in our writer's room. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning biographer who is also one of the preeminent Fitzgerald scholars of all time, wrote a brilliant biography on Sam Goldwyn as well, wrote the preeminent biography on Charles Lindbergh. And so this was the guy that could say, well, here's what was happening in 1936, and here's who was having the parties, and here's what they talked about, and here's who was sleeping with who, and here's who was gay, and here's who was not. His knowledge of that period was just encyclopedic. Our writer's room was essentially myself and Chris Kaiser, who was my partner in running the show. We had 4 other writers on the staff, 2 of whom were going to get 1 episode, and then another pair was going to get another episode. So they were going to be writing 3 of what would wind up being 9 scripts. We had a bunch of writers' assistants and other people who were consultants. And, it wound up every day being about 14 people in that room. When we walked in there, obviously the pilot had already been made and shot. And I had already written the first 3 episodes of the season. So we had episodes 101, 102, and 103 written. And they were giving me notes on those scripts, and I was rewriting as we went. And then we were mapping out the rest of the season on a giant whiteboard. It was, an incredibly fertile time creatively. Everybody felt that they were in a very safe place if they wanted to suggest something. There really were no bad ideas. There were just better ones. We were mapping out what was going to be 9 episodes in addition to the pilot. We found out about a month into that process that we were getting less money from Amazon than we had been told initially. So we had to cut an episode after everything was already on the whiteboard. So it was just sort of a morning where Chris Kaiser and I came in at about 7:30 and refashioned what would have been a 9-episode arc into 8 episodes, and crunched and compressed and got rid of some things, and then sort of restarted the process, mapped it all out, and then off we went.
That sounded like incredible fun, but stressful at the same time. I mean,
no, it was actually never stressful. I look, this is going to sound obnoxious, but this show has been pure bliss. This is easily the best working experience I've ever had. I've loved every single second of it. The only possible exception to that would be that we were in the writer's room on the morning of November 9th, which was the day after the election.
Oh, yeah.
And a number of us were very deeply in the tank for the next couple weeks, where we were trying to function and continue breaking story. At least on my part, I had to be medicated to get through that period. It was so upsetting.
Yeah,
right.
I know. We all felt the same way.
We're trying to help each other and inspire each other and keep each other's courage up. That was the only time on the entire show that wasn't bliss, and it wasn't the fault of the show.
Right. It's obviously a period drama, and I was talking to a lot of people about how again it really did remind me of Boardwalk Empire with people who existed in real life like Fritz Lang and Louis B. Mayer.
Yes.
And what challenges did you face having to integrate both fiction and history into The Last Tycoon?
Well, to me, none of those are challenges. They're all just opportunities. We felt very strongly that this show could be a mixture of names you had heard of and fictional characters. I loved the idea of integrating Louis Mayer and Marlene Dietrich and Fritz Lang and a couple others into the story. But my favorite character I ever created in my entire life is the Jennifer Beals character, Margot Taft, who was a mixture of Joan Crawford and Merle Oberon. We just found all kinds of ways to make fiction and nonfiction weave together. And by the way, her performance is completely spectacular.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say episode 5 is one of my favorites. And that's where you find out something about her. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into spoilers, but yeah, she gives an incredible performance in that 5th episode.
She's just great. She's just great and lovely to work with and has been unbelievably generous in the way that she's talked about the show and talked about her character in the press, and has obviously done everything she can do to help us, and I'm sure we'll continue to do more.
I mean, your cast is just amazing. And, I'm telling more and more people about Matt Bomer. I have to admit, I didn't know who Matt Bomer was. I didn't watch White Collar. I didn't. I mean, sometimes they fall through the cracks. But I'm looking at this guy and, obviously he's handsome as hell. And I'm like, all right, this guy's killer handsome. Let's see what else he can bring, but the more I watched Tycoon, I was like, this guy he's enigmatic. He's a little Don Draper, but not. But right. he can carry the show when Kelsey Grammer isn't on. Right. And he commands the scene. And I'm telling people, like I said, this guy Matt Bomer, he's really, yes, Kelsey Grammer's in the show, but Matt Bomer is the guy for me when I was watching this show. That's how I felt.
Look, he's a wonderful actor who I think, paradoxically enough, has been disadvantaged by being as handsome as he is, because you can dismiss his acting chops, which are considerable. I would also say he gets better as the show goes on.
He does.
I think we asked more and more of him as the show went on, and we didn't find anything that he couldn't do. To play that part, to play Monroe Starr, the actor has to check a lot of boxes. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to look like Matt looks. But more importantly, you have to have this quality by which people look at you and wonder, what is that guy thinking? Because he's thinking something, and he's not showing you. He has to look fiercely intelligent, which he is, and he also has to look like there's an enormous well of pain right below the surface that he is just refusing to let you see. But that brain is just always on. And that's who Monroe is, and that's what Matt plays. Kelsey is such a spectacular actor. Kelsey has such a natural gift for comedy, but he's a wonderful dramatic actor. And what I love most about Kelsey's performance is he has great access to his feelings, but he also always shows you that he loves Monroe Starr. Even when he's killing Monroe Starr, you see the father-son fondness in there. Then you throw in Lily Collins, who is just a superstar about to happen. Rosemarie DeWitt, Dominique McElligott as Kathleen, fantastic. Mark O'Brien as Max Minor, who we think is absolutely about to explode. Jennifer Beals, as I mentioned. We love Kundabo, who plays Zepp, who's the fixer on the lot. Love Zoe Chalenti.
And Saul Rubinek as Louis B. Mayer.
That's great, as Mayer. I mean, it's a beautifully cast show.
It really
is. Sharon Bialy, among other people, who is just a phenomenal casting director. She also cast Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. She's great. And the thing about working with Sharon is she never brought us a bad actor. Every part we cast, we were choosing between 4 great actors. and we just had to pick which one felt right for that particular character.
So let's say the stars align, which we all hope that will happen. What's your vision for the second season of Tycoon? I mean, without getting into spoilers, what can we look forward to seeing?
Well, there's almost nothing I can tell you on a story level that would be a spoiler.
Obviously.
I can tell you that I've already written the first episode of the season. And in terms of sort of the broad themes of it, I think season 2 will largely be about forgiveness, what it can mend and what it can't. I think we saw a couple of magic formulas in season 1 that we're going to lean pretty hard into in season 2. I would say you'll probably see more love, more drama, more betrayal, more fun, more darkness, a little more violence, certainly a lot of glamour and a lot of beauty. And I think we've now sort of laid the pipe in terms of story. And now all of those seeds, they're just going to bloom. Yes, there will be the introduction of a few new characters who are going to be particularly critical. But basically, you're going to see, okay, it's 9 months after Monroe Star's heart attack. Mm-hmm. Let's see what's happened in those 9 months and now where we go.
Okay. Billy, before we let you go, for people who haven't seen The Last Tycoon,
that is my dog, by the way.
That's okay. I have one too. What would you like to tell people about The Last Tycoon if they haven't seen it on Amazon? What would you like to say to them?
What I'd like to say is we made a show that was about not just the difference between the dream of Hollywood and the reality of Hollywood. We made a show about why that dream has such power over the people that are in it. Everybody that's in our show, every character that's in our show is chasing something that's enormously elusive and completely intoxicating that has to do with more than just success. It has to do with love and glamour and our definition of ourself and the image that we try to create for ourselves, the story, whether it's true or a lie that we tell about ourselves. This is all the stuff that Fitzgerald was always writing about. He was always writing about the cost of the American dream. Our show demonstrates the cost of the American dream at the same time that it's shining a light on the beauty of Hollywood. How's that?
That sounds great, Billy. I really appreciate you coming on our little podcast.
Thank you, Billy.
I really want to get the word out about this show, and I hope nothing but the best for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And anyone out there beating the drum and pleading our case, we truly appreciate it.
Okay, Billy. And where can people find you on Twitter, just in case they want to reach out and follow the exploits of the show?
It's at Billy Ray 5229. Okay. And because I love my Tycooners so much, there's a DM there, and I always answer.
Okay. All right, Billy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Enjoyed this episode of the Pop Culture Juke Joint? Then don't forget to tip the barkeep by subscribing and reviewing us on iTunes and Stitcher. Also, for some sizzling noir tales, head on over to Amazon to check out Anthony's hard-boiled fiction, available in print, digital, and audiobook formats. On social media, follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Venutolo or like his page on Facebook. For everything else, please visit his webpage at www.anthonyvenutolo.com. We'll see you next week.